Hi everyone, I am in my plant room today and I want to talk about some of my plants. I think this is super important. I have probably, I don't know if it's close to 2,000 plants, but this is one of my plant rooms that I continuously work on, and it is one of my greatest hobbies. It's one of my favorite things that I do, and it definitely is something that just gives me joy, makes me happy, and makes me feel just alive. And so I wanted to kind of talk about some different things about plants in general. I just recently did a short on just about how to basically increase the longevity and health of your plant. And so you can see here I have a lot of rare different plants here, and a lot of them are just thriving, and then some of them do have some problems. So I wanted to talk about, well, first of all, talk about the light. So I have both artificial light, you see the white lights up there, and then I have the purple/pink lights. And so there's also the natural light, of course, that we have there. Of course, natural light is probably going to be the absolute best and most important, but when you can't have it all, you have to find a way to be able to supplement that. And so what I do is I got these off of Amazon, and they're amazing. We don't turn on all of them, so that's why some of the bulbs are not on currently. But yeah, lighting is super important, and you have to be careful too with lighting. Sometimes what happens is if you have any kind of amount of water, so let's say you have a humidifier, mine's off right now, and you get some water right on the leaf, what can happen is you can get little spots like that or like that. And sometimes those can be fungal spots too, but you just want to be very careful about leaving any kind of water if you're dusting off and things like that. So that's one thing. And you'll see also too that can change the variegation in your plant. See that Epipremnum panatum variegated. It's absolutely beautiful. And you can lose, some plants will revert. And so, like for instance, this Burl Marx philodendron, you can see some of it has reverted, but that's natural. I mean, sometimes you don't need all variegation in plants, just because of the fact that if you have too much variegation, it actually can be very unhealthy for a plant. In fact, I'll show you kind of an example of a pink princess that's just doing terrible. This had too much variegation. You can see that pink leaf. I actually cut that off from this plant here. This is actually a propagation that actually completely reverted and is doing completely healthy. It's very happy, and you can see a little bit of variegation there, but you can see how much healthier that looks versus this. And this actually came from that. So it's important to recognize that sometimes variegation, you gotta it may seem like a great thing, but it's not always the best thing. So let's move on to the next thing besides lighting. Let's talk about soil. So I make my own soil. In fact, let me show you here as I pan across my plant room. My room's totally messy right now, but you can see here that I make my own soil, and it's got several different things in there. It's got pumice, it's got orchid bark, it's got cocoa chips, which I love. It's probably my favorite. It's really great for aeroids, and I consider this an aeroid type mix. It's got charcoal, which is helpful for just filtering in general. It's got some cocoa peat in there, just in general cocoa peat that I get from like blocks sometimes. I also have like big old bags from it. And then also there's granules in there. You can't see them. Sometimes I'll use worm casting, but I basically use some kind of fertilizer of some sort. There's also Super Thrive granules that I'll use, but I like to I like to make my own soil, and this is mostly for aeroids, but different plants need different things. So often I'll change the soil and the plants, and that does it if they're struggling. But there's certain things like ferns, and let me come over here and show you kind of the fern soil, which I'm kind of still switching it up, but I've got some rice hull in there, probably too much. I probably need to change this soil up, but I just made this soil too, and it doesn't have the cocoa chips. It does have kind of the cocoa peat in there. And then sometimes I'll just use good old sphagnum moss, as you can see there. So yeah, understanding what your plant needs, and sometimes you may have to just adjust it based on how the plant's looking, and you'll notice that. And also sometimes it can be pests too, so having like those mosquito I guess it's mosquito chips. I haven't used them a whole lot, but sometimes the soil can be infected. But like even in this, I just took this out of the soil, and I decided that I needed to just put it back to the basics. Sometimes I'll use things like stratum for propagating, but And pon, a lot of people use pon. I'm not the best with pon, but I do have some plants that are in pon, and I have mixed feelings about it. So soil, yeah, that's definitely important, making sure that, like, for instance, like anthuriums have well draining. They like to be soaked and completely dried out. And then there's other plants that like alocasias who are a little thirstier. I'll show you some of the alocasias that I have. Like, for instance, the silver dragon has got, I still use the same aroid soil, but these like heavy fertilizing and also lots of water. And so you got to be very careful with these, because even though they will do really well with, if you get it a little on the drier side, it's still, for the health of your plant, I think in general, just making sure that you're watering enough. And then, what next? Let's see here. Fertilizing. Let's talk about fertilizing. So I have all kinds of different fertilizers. I have granules, which I really like. Super Thrive also has the Osmocote. Osmocote is amazing. I think it's really great. And those are kind of more long-term fertilizers. You got to be careful sometimes if you're fertilizing too much, because what will happen, and especially on the edges of the leaf, you'll see that there. Sometimes that can be water related too, but you might see some areas that just don't look right. Like that right there. I think that one would be, well, actually, I don't know if that one would be particularly, but sometimes you'll get, like, for instance, here. I think that definitely is from over fertilizing. So you just have to be careful about that. But every plant needs a little something different. Alocasias tend to like to be fertilized a little bit more, and also what kind of fertilizer they need. So I think the best way to do it is just basically to dilute, and small bits at a time. Some people will do it every single week, and I do think that there are some good things about that. There is the GT Focus that a lot of people just swear by. I like this HB 101. I like Super Thrive, especially for transplanted plants or like rehabbing plants. And then, yeah, and then I also like fish emulsion or fish. I think that's really great for the health of your plant. It's kind of more on the natural side. Calatheas are not a type of plant that likes to be fertilized very often. So like I said, you do need to kind of have an idea. Here's a Calathea here, and you will see kind of, this is what happens sometimes. Calatheas are one that the salts build up and it can create issues. What else can I say? Let's see here. Watering. So one of the ways that I figure out when you have a humidifier going, this is not going right now, but when you have a humidifier going, a lot of times you'll have to water less often. Or also, and here's another thing, I have plants that are in terrariums, and I have found that I do not have to water these very often. So when you clump or group plants together, that just creates more humidity in general. And you can also do pebble trays as well, but that can affect the watering, obviously. So when I water, a lot of times what I'll do, and some people will like take little like stakes or things like that, I will just feel the soil, and I'll kind of put my finger down into it, and if it feels moist, then I won't do it. And I kind of learned the nature of the plants that I have too. So like, for instance, like the cacti, obviously those are going a lot longer without watering them. But some plants that tend to be very thirsty and very dramatic is often the calatheas. And then begonias, you can't, it's hard to get back when you've kind of neglected them. So let's see what else here. And I'm trying to think. Okay, so moving on to and then also I forgot to say about the watering. I use either rainwater or I use dehumidifier water. If I have to use tap water, then often what I'm going to do is I am going to set it out in the jugs that I have with the cap off for at least 24 hours, because the chlorine can be very harsh on the plants and cause burning issues and leaf issues. So definitely watering is a super big important part of that. And then you want to prevent things like root rot. And a lot of times the watering and also the soil that you have to balance it out there, because you will get root rot, especially if you're smothering your plant. If it's not getting the air and nutrients that it needs, it's just not going to do very well. So I think pretty much the other thing too is dusting your plant. So you need your leaves to be able to breathe. There is this like, it's like they sell it. I think they're not selling it quite as much because people are kind of getting the idea behind it. There's this leaf shine stuff that I don't see them selling as much often, but it's really bad because it's supposed to clog the pores. But it's also one of the things that I've noticed when I don't dust my plants, I'll see actually more issues with pests and just kind of all kinds of leaf problems. And so I try to dust them quite often. I think that helps them to breathe and just for the health of the plant in general. Let's see what else. Oh, and then speaking of pests, there are certain like alocasias, they have a tendency towards spider mites, being able to identify. A lot of times that's the first thing that I'll go to is the pest. And there's lots of different options. I mean, I like Captain Jack's. Captain Jack's, actually, I'll show you here. I do like Captain Jack's. I think it's great. There's also these granules, and I don't have any out right now, but there's these granules that are amazing, and I love them. And sometimes when I have a really troubled plant, I just completely repot and getting new soil, get the old soil out, and then putting in the granules as well. And sometimes I'll just cut off all the leaves. Sometimes I find that the easiest way to do it, so I'll do that. What else can I tell you? So, and then temperature. Temperature is super important. One of the ways, most plants seem to like between 60 to 80, kind of that sweet spot there. And one of the ways that I kind of balance out, because we're in a basement and sometimes it can stay a little cooler, besides having a fan, I also have a dehumidifier that, I know this sounds weird, between having a humidifier and a dehumidifier. This actually warms up the room. So when I can tell that something just feels off, I will put the dehumidifier on, or if it's too much humidity, or I notice that there's mold that's happening, or if I watered too much. You actually see this one here because I accidentally, there's no drainage holes in there, and I was just messing around with this one here, and I think I watered too much, and I just couldn't get it all out of there. It's got sphagnum moss in there, so that's what I did. I put it right by there, and it seemed to get a lot happier. So it's kind of the balance between the humidity and too much humidity. Well, that's all the things that I can think of for right now. Make sure to follow along for more plant tips. There's a lot of other things that I could add to this, like pruning, propagation, moss poles, all of that, and just in general the life cycle of the plant. But I just wanted to kind of give you kind of some ideas of exactly how to take care of your plant. I guess I should mention the life cycle. If you are a new plant person, don't be so hard on yourself. I know a lot of times what happens is that you get a plant and you think, oh my gosh, I killed the plant. How did I kill the plant? What is wrong with me? I'm a terrible plant person. No, don't do that. Just keep on trying. If you enjoy it, if you like it, if you love it, just continue. Just continue. You'll find that some plants, for instance, like I'll give you this here. You see how many plants I have, right? I have lots of plants. But this one right here for me, I'm gonna have to fix that one. Well, that happens too. So, but you can see here this maidenhair fern. I've killed so many of these, and I'm just trying to figure it out. And so that's the thing about plants, is that you just keep on trying. And pretty soon, after doing research and talking to people and just filling out your plant, you may get it figured out. And so I'm still working with this, and that's what I recommend, is just keep trying and just don't give up on yourself or your plants, and just know that some plants are going to be a little more difficult than others. And sometimes it's just little tweaks in the environment or with the soil or with water, whatever it is, that just keep trying. Don't give up on it. So, well, I'm going to go ahead and sign off now, and I hope you guys have a good day, and I will be back for some more plant tips soon.